He said, "You only want me when you're broke." So I said, "And?" Now I'm broke and blocked. Looking back, I probably should have seen this coming a mile away, but honestly, I still don't think I did anything wrong. I'm Dina, 30, and I'm about to tell you how my entire life imploded because my husband couldn't handle a simple truth about relationships. 3 years ago, I was drowning in debt with maxed out credit cards, student loans from a degree I never finished, and a shopping habit I couldn't kick. I was working as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm, making barely enough to cover my tiny apartment and minimum payments. I'd cycle through guys who'd take me out and buy me things, but none of them stuck around when they realized how deep my financial hole was. Then I met Randy at my coworker's housewarming party. He was 32, established in his career as a systems analyst, owned his condo, and had this quiet confidence about money that I immediately noticed. He wasn't flashy, but he had a good watch, nice shoes, and didn't flinch when picking up the tab for a group of us at the bar after the party. I gave him my number that night. Our first date was at this upscale restaurant where the menu didn't even list prices. I ordered the lobster and expensive wine without hesitation, watching to see if he'd react. He didn't. When I forgot my wallet in my other purse, he just smiled and covered the bill. That's when I knew he had potential. I started texting Randy whenever bill collectors were blowing up my phone or when my car needed repairs I couldn't afford. I'd say things like, "Having such a rough day, could use some cheering up." He'd swoop in with dinner invitations or surprise me by paying for whatever was stressing me out. When my car broke down, he covered the $800 repair without me even directly asking. I told myself this wasn't using him. This was just him being a gentleman. Between financial emergencies, I'd go days without responding to his texts. When my credit card had breathing room or my paycheck had just hit, suddenly I was too busy with work or having a girls' night. Looking back, the pattern was embarrassingly obvious, but I convinced myself I was just reaching out when I needed emotional support, which happened to coincide with being broke. Randy never called me out directly in those early days, but sometimes he'd make these comments like, "Nice to hear from you again, rough week?" Or, "Your texts always seem to come right before the first of the month." I'd laugh it off or change the subject, and he'd drop it because he was already falling for me. 6 months into dating, my apartment complex raised the rent beyond what I could afford. I casually mentioned this to Randy over dinner, adding that I might need to crash with friends while looking for a cheaper place. Within a week, he suggested I move in with him to save money and see if we're compatible for the long term. His place was gorgeous compared to my shoebox, and I jumped at the opportunity to split bills with someone who made 3 times my salary. Except we never really split bills. I'd conveniently not have my share when utilities were due or claim I needed to buy work clothes instead of contributing to groceries. Randy would sigh and cover everything, and I'd promised to make it up next month. I never did. The proposal came after we'd lived together for almost a year. The ring wasn't as big as I'd hoped. I'd left Pinterest boards open on our shared iPad with much flashier styles, but I said yes immediately. A successful guy with a stable income and a proven track record of financial rescues? I'd hit the jackpot. During our engagement, we finally had the money talk. Randy, ever the responsible one, laid out a budget and suggested a financial plan. He knew about my debt, well, most of it. I downplayed the total by about $15,000 and proposed that we split our arrangement. He'd cover our household expenses and day-to-day living costs if I dedicated my entire salary to aggressively paying down my debt. Once I was debt-free, we'd combine finances completely. I nodded along enthusiastically, calling him my financial savior, and promising I was ready to get serious about fixing my credit. We even set up a debt tracker on the refrigerator. Of course, I had no intention of putting my entire paycheck toward boring old debt. A girl has needs, like the seasonal Nordstrom sale and happy hours with coworkers and Uber Eats when cooking feels like too much work. The wedding was beautiful and expensive. I insisted on upgrades for almost everything, from the venue to the flowers to my dress. Randy wanted a smaller affair, mentioning his savings and our future home down payment. I cried and asked if he wanted people thinking he couldn't provide a proper wedding for his wife. He caved, as he always did when I turned on the waterworks. The first few months of marriage were blissful. Randy covered our shared expenses as agreed, and I made the minimum payments on my debts while telling him I was sending in much more. The debt tracker on the fridge showed progress because I manually updated it with fake numbers. Meanwhile, I was still shopping, still meeting friends for expensive brunches, and still hiding packages when they arrived at our door. What Randy didn't know wouldn't hurt him, right? At least that's what I thought, until everything went sideways. About 6 months into our marriage, I got promoted at work to executive assistant to the marketing director, Blake. He was 38, divorced, and flirty in that professional but not really way. The pay bump was decent, but instead of putting it toward my debt as promised, I upgraded my wardrobe and started getting my nails done weekly. I deserved to look the part after all. Randy noticed the new clothes and raised an eyebrow at the shopping bags. I thought we agreed your raise would go toward paying down the credit cards faster, he said one evening, frowning at a statement that showed my balance had actually increased. I need to dress professionally now that I'm working directly with the director, I explained, batting my eyelashes. It's an investment in my career. Besides, Blake appreciates professionalism. I mentioned Blake's name deliberately, knowing it made Randy slightly jealous when I talked about my boss. Our arguments about money became more frequent. Randy would check the debt tracker, notice the numbers didn't match the statements, and confront me. I'd either cry about how hard I was trying or distract him by bringing up his own spending, like the golf clubs he bought after saving for months or the occasional beer with colleagues. You spend money on yourself too, I'd snap, as if his one hobby purchase was equivalent to my daily shopping sprees. Why is it only a problem when I do it? For our first anniversary, I expected something extravagant, maybe the diamond tennis bracelet I'd been hinting at for months. Instead, Randy presented me with a budget plan showing how we could be debt-free in 2 years if we both committed. I faked enthusiasm while silently seething. That night, I ordered the bracelet myself, using his emergency credit card. When the charge notification hit his phone, all hell broke loose. $3,000? Are you serious? Randy's face was red with anger. We can't afford this, and you used my emergency card without asking. It's our anniversary. I waited all day for a real gift, I shot back. You gave me a spreadsheet while Blake got his girlfriend diamond earrings for her birthday. That comparison pushed Randy over the edge. First, we're not Blake and his girlfriend. Second, Blake makes half what I do with twice the debt, according to you. Third, I've noticed you only reach out to me lately when you need something. Money for lunch, to cover a bill, or to buy something you want. When was the last time you just texted to see how my day was going? I rolled my eyes. That's not true. Randy pulled out his phone and scrolled through our text history. Look at the last 20 messages you sent. Every single one asks for money or mentions something you want to buy. So, you're my husband. That's literally your job, to provide, I said dismissively. I don't see why you're making such a big deal about this. His expression changed then, from anger to something worse. Disappointment mixed with realization. You know what I've noticed, Dina? You only want me when you're broke. The truth of his words hit a nerve, but I wasn't about to let him know that, so I looked him straight in the eyes and said, And? Isn't that what husbands are for? The silence that followed was deafening. Something shifted in Randy's eyes, like he was finally seeing me clearly for the first time. I should have backtracked, should have apologized, but my pride wouldn't let me. Instead, I doubled down. What kind of man gets upset about taking care of his wife? I sneered, going for his masculinity. Real men provide without complaining. Or should I start asking other men for money instead? Randy's face went pale. What does that mean? Nothing, I said with a shrug, but my tone suggested otherwise. But Blake always offers to help when I mention being stressed about money. He says it's ridiculous that you make me stressed about basic expenses with your budgets and financial plans. I watched Randy's jaw clench. I knew exactly what buttons I was pushing. He'd been suspicious of my relationship with Blake for months. The long hours, The texts after work, the office inside jokes I'd mention but never fully explain. "Are you having an affair with him?" Randy asked point blank. I gasped dramatically. "How dare you? I'm just saying, maybe I should take him up on his offers to help since my own husband seems to resent supporting me. Blake understands that a woman in my position has certain standards to maintain." Randy stood up, eerily calm. "I'm going for a drive. When I get back, we need to have a serious conversation about our future, because right now, I'm not sure we have one." As the door slammed behind him, I felt a flicker of panic. I'd pushed too far, but my pride wouldn't let me admit it. Instead, I opened my laptop and ordered another pair of shoes out of spite, using my maxed-out credit card. That would show him. I didn't realize it then, but that argument was the beginning of the end for us. The next few weeks were tense and quiet. Randy stopped asking about my spending, but also stopped offering to help with any of my expenses. He created a separate checking account and moved most of our joint money into it. When I confronted him, he simply said, "I'm protecting our household finances while we figure things out." What he meant was he was protecting his money from me. And for the first time, I started to worry. Not about our marriage, but about my financial safety net disappearing. Randy began carefully documenting household expenses and keeping receipts for everything. He'd leave printouts showing which bills he'd paid and which were my responsibility according to our agreement. When I'd ask for money, he'd calmly refer to our budget and ask to see my debt payment receipts first. Of course, I couldn't show what didn't exist. I started spending more time at work with Blake, partly to avoid the tension at home and partly to make Randy jealous. I'd mention Blake constantly, how he complimented my outfit, how he took the team to lunch, how he understood work-life balance better than most men. I was playing a dangerous game, and I knew it. There was some truth to my hints about Blake. We had been flirting, and occasionally his hand would linger on my shoulder or back. Nothing physical had happened yet, but the attention was intoxicating, especially as things at home deteriorated. My spending didn't slow down despite Randy's new boundaries. If anything, I shopped more out of resentment, hiding packages in my car trunk or having them delivered to work. I started using buy now, pay later services to spread out payments and opened 2 new credit cards Randy didn't know about. One evening, Randy asked to see my credit report as part of getting our finances back on track. I refused, which led to another argument. "What are you hiding, Dina?" he demanded. "Your debt should be decreasing, but you're acting like it's getting worse." "You don't trust me," I deflected. "Why should I show you anything when you're treating me like a child?" "Because we had an agreement," he said firmly. "I've kept my end, covering our living expenses so you could focus on your debt. But you're hiding things and possibly having an affair. I need transparency or this marriage won't work." "Maybe it's already not working," I snapped. "Maybe Blake is right about you being controlling with money." Randy's expression hardened. "You talk about me with him? Your boss? What exactly is going on between you two, Dina?" I smiled mysteriously, enjoying his jealousy despite the danger. "Nothing you need to worry about. He's just more generous than you. He doesn't question buying a coworker lunch or spotting someone money when they're short. Does he know you're married, or does he think the wedding ring is just an accessory that matches your outfit?" Randy's voice was ice cold. I rolled my eyes. "Of course he knows I'm married. He also knows my husband is weirdly obsessed with money and budgets instead of making sure his wife is happy." Randy shook his head slowly. "No, Dina. I'm weirdly obsessed with keeping us afloat while you sabotage our financial future. This isn't sustainable." I didn't realize just how right he was until 3 weeks later, when everything fell apart completely. I'd been ignoring the repossession warnings for my car, 3 months behind on payments because I'd been using that money for shopping and lunches with coworkers instead. I figured I'd deal with it eventually or convince Randy to bail me out when it became a real emergency. Well, that emergency arrived in the form of a final notice threatening repossession within 48 hours unless I paid $3,000 immediately. With my credit cards maxed and no savings, I had no choice but to ask Randy. I waited until he seemed in a decent mood, cooking dinner while I sipped wine at the kitchen island. I approached carefully, wrapping my arms around him from behind. Babe, I said sweetly, I need to talk to you about something. Randy stiffened immediately. Let me guess, you need money. I pulled away, annoyed at his tone. Don't be like that. I've got a situation with my car loan. What kind of situation? He turned to face me, spatula in hand. They're threatening to repossess it if I don't make a payment by tomorrow. I need $3,000. I tried to sound casual, like I was asking to borrow a sweater. Randy set down the spatula deliberately. $3,000 for a payment on a car that you drive to work every day, where you've just received a raise, while I've been covering all our household expenses so you could pay off your debts. Is that right? His calm was unnerving. I expected yelling, not this controlled questioning. Yes, and it's an emergency, I insisted. I can't lose my car. How would I get to work? Dina, where has your money been going? You make enough to cover your car payment easily. I waved dismissively. Cost of living is insane, you know that. Plus, I had unexpected expenses. Like what? His voice remained steady. Medical bills, I lied, and my mom needed help last month. Another lie. Randy walked to his office without a word. From best, I thought he was getting his checkbook, but when he returned, he was carrying a manila folder. Sit down, he said, pulling out a kitchen chair. I complied, confused. What's this about? I just need help with my car. Before I decide whether to give you $3,000, I want to show you something. He opened the folder and laid out papers one by one. The first was a statement from a credit card I thought he didn't know about, showing purchases at Nordstrom, Sephora, and DoorDash totaling over $2,200 just last month. How did you? It was mailed to our house, he interrupted. Here's another interesting document. He slid forward a bank statement showing my direct deposits and withdrawals. Notice anything? Your take-home pay is $4,200 monthly. Your debt payments should be around $1,500 if you're following our plan. Your car payment is $485. That leaves over $2,000 for your personal expenses. Where's the money going, Dina? My face burned. You're spying on me? Going through my mail? And these, he continued, ignoring my deflection, are screenshots of our text conversations for the past year. He laid out printed pages. I've highlighted every time you've contacted me first. Notice anything? 97% of your initiated texts are asking for money or mentioning something you want to buy. The others are mostly coordinating schedules. I crossed my arms. So, what's your point? My point is that you've been lying about paying off your debt. You've been hiding purchases, opening new credit accounts, and using me as an ATM while spending your own money on luxury items. His voice remained eerily controlled. Now you want another $3,000 for a problem you created through financial irresponsibility after we explicitly agreed you would handle your own debt. Fine, I messed up. Is that what you want to hear? I threw up my hands. I'm not perfect with money, but that's why I have you. You're good with money, I'm not. We balance each other. He actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. That would be a partnership. This isn't balanced, Dina. This is parasitic. The words stung. Excuse me, I'm your wife. A wife who apparently only contacts her husband when she needs money. A wife who mocks her husband's masculinity when he enforces boundaries. A wife who threatens to ask other men for money, specifically her boss, with whom she's been spending increasing amounts of time. My stomach dropped as he pulled out one final paper, a printed text conversation. But these weren't our texts. These were messages between me and Blake, screenshots taken from my phone. Texts where I complained about Randy being cheap and financially controlling. Texts where Blake offered to take care of me in ways your husband won't. Texts arranging meetings outside of work hours, with suggestive language that couldn't be misinterpreted. When did you? My voice failed. You left your phone unlocked last week when you were in the shower, Randy said flatly. I had suspicions for months. I wish I'd been wrong. Those messages aren't what they look like, I scrambled to explain. Blake and I joke around. It's just office banter. Randy slid all the papers back into the folder. I don't believe you, and I'm not giving you $3,000 to solve a problem you created while betraying me emotionally and financially. Panic rose in my chest. But they'll take my car. I need it. You should have thought about that before spending your car payment on whatever was more important at the moment. His voice was tired now. I've already spoken with a divorce attorney. I'm filing papers tomorrow. The word divorce hit me like a slap. You can't be serious. Over some texts and shopping, every couple fights about money. This isn't about money, Dina. It's about honesty, respect, and commitment. All things lacking in our marriage. You confirmed everything when you said, and, after I pointed out you only want me when you're broke. That moment clarified everything. I switched tactics, letting tears fill my eyes. Randy, please. I love you. I'll change. I'll go to therapy for my shopping. I'll cut up the credit cards. I'll show you all my accounts. Too late, he said, standing up. I've packed a bag. I'm staying with Chris until you figure out your living situation. You have 30 days to find a new place. But where am I supposed to go? I can't afford a place on my own with my debt. The irony wasn't lost on me, but panic overrode self-awareness. That's not my problem anymore, Randy said, picking up a duffel bag I hadn't noticed by the door. You chose this outcome with every lie, every hidden purchase, and every inappropriate text to your boss. Oh, and Dina? Don't try using any of our joint cards. I've already frozen them. And then he was gone, the door closing with a quiet click that somehow felt more final than a slam would have. I sat frozen at the kitchen table, the smell of burning dinner filling the air as Randy's dinner, the meal he'd been cooking for us, charred in the forgotten pan. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Randy wasn't bluffing about the divorce. Papers arrived 2 days later, laying out his terms. He'd already documented everything: my financial deception, my emotional manipulation, and worst of all, the emotional affair with Blake that the texts clearly proved. The evidence was overwhelming. My car was repossessed 3 days after our confrontation. I begged Blake for help with transportation, or even a small loan, finally crossing the line from flirtatious texts to outright asking for support. His response was illuminating. I'm not looking to financially support anyone, Dina. I thought we were just having fun. Maybe you should work things out with your husband. When I explained we were getting divorced, he became even more distant, eventually reassigning me to work with another director. The emotional affair had been exciting for him as a game, but a desperate, newly single woman with financial problems and no car? That wasn't part of his plan. With no car, a pending divorce, and credit cards that had already begun to go to collections, I had only one option left: moving back in with my mother at age 30. The humiliation was complete when I had to ask her to help me move my things out of the condo because I couldn't afford movers. I told you that man was too good for you, my mother said as we packed boxes. Always flashing your spending around social media while he worked hard. You never appreciated what you had. I wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. For the first time, I was facing the consequences of my actions with no safety net. The divorce was finalized in record time, just 3 months. Randy's evidence of my financial deception and emotional affair meant I received nothing in the settlement. No alimony, no shared assets beyond my personal belongings. His lawyer was brutally efficient. I tried contacting Randy multiple times: calls, texts, emails, even showing up at his workplace once. Each attempt was met with silence. He had blocked me on every platform, and when I appeared at his office, security escorted me out before I even saw him. It's been 6 months since the divorce. I'm still living with my mom, sharing a bedroom with my teenage niece when she visits on weekends. My credit score has plummeted to the low 400s. I'm taking the bus to work, the same job but with reduced responsibilities and strained relationships since the Blake situation became office gossip. Last week, I saw Randy's relationship status change on a mutual friend's social media post. He's dating someone new, a financial advisor with her own practice. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I scrolled through her profile, I noticed everything I wasn't: financially responsible, independent, supportive. Their pictures showed them hiking, cooking together, building something real. Meanwhile, I was back where I started, only worse: more debt, fewer prospects, and a divorce on my record. My friend Ash asked me yesterday if I'd learned anything from all this. I told her what she wanted to hear: that I'd grown, that I understood my mistakes, that I was working on myself. But honestly, between you and me, I still don't think I was wrong. Randy was my husband. Supporting me was literally his job. If he couldn't handle a few shopping sprees and some harmless flirting, that's on him, not me. Tomorrow, I'm downloading dating apps again. There are plenty of financially stable men out there who won't flinch at helping a beautiful woman with her bills. I just need to be smarter about it next time, hide the spending better, keep my phone locked, and maybe not push so hard when they raise concerns. After all, I've always landed on my feet. This is just a temporary setback. But sometimes, late at night in my childhood bedroom, I remember Randy's words. You only want me when you're broke. And for just a moment, before I push the thought away, I wonder if he was right all along.